Hi, my name is Angela Coulter, and I'm here to talk to you about the July 2015 energetic, spiritual, metaphysical updates as to what's going on in our reality and maybe give you some clarity as to something you may be experiencing. We have seen, especially in the United States, an incredible amount of shark awareness in the past couple months. Lots of really unusual sightings and bites happening. There seem to be sharks everywhere in places that they typically are not found. And I have had the shark in my consciousness now for a couple of, well, for more than a month. And what's interesting is this. So I've had a lot of people ask me, so what do the sharks mean? And for a while I had known part of the story and or part of the message, and I have gotten the rest of it. And just it's been all this other stuff coming together so that I could get here. Now it's July, so I might as well do this, right? So it started with my husband and I diving by a coral reef and seeing at a distance what we're pretty sure was black tip reef shark, and it was at a distance. It was just at the edge of visibility. It was probably maybe 100 to 150 feet away, and it was interesting because we had experienced a lot of nurse sharks, and this one felt different. We had not ever experienced one of those in the water before with them. And the funniest part was this: I felt no fear. There was not just no fear, but there was this curiosity of feeling energetically the connection with it, even as far away as it was, and feeling the difference in its consciousness and its awareness of me and us and what was there, and just kept on going. Not interested, not the prime meat target. In fact, too much sort of a pain. But I remember thinking, and the interesting part was, I believe everyone thought it was a nurse shark, and actually my husband and I both, and it was funny, we didn't even talk about it till we came back, and my husband said, that one shark, he said that wasn't, and I was like, no, it wasn't a nurse shark, right? Anyway, funny, because nurse sharks have a completely different, they're very like catfishy, so they're very like laid back, very different consciousness. Anyway, so that was the start of it. And then then I had this dream, and then these shark attacks started happening all over the place, and I started seeing all this stuff about sharks in the news, and then I started having these dreams where the sharks were joining me. Now I have a lot of tie in with the ocean world. I lived in it as part of it for a really long time, as many of us have. And so in all the dreams that I had with sharks in them, they were all swimming around me, and it was just such a actually very beautiful and calming, and there was just such a respect for their beauty and for their place. And they were communicating with me, give me the messages that they were there to bring, and it took me a couple of dreams before I remembered them because of all the stuff that's going on. And so it's quite beautiful when we release our fear, and as part of the big ecosystem. Now the funny part is, people say to me all the time, well, they're afraid of being in the water with sharks. I'm like, well, when you're in their environment, when you're fully submerged in their environment, they really don't take much notice with you. And most of the time, it's for their perspective, it's sort of like a mistake or not intended to be human food. But the important thing to note, so let's look at the bigger picture, okay? What is the shark all about, right? So I started looking at the shark totem and shark energy and what that means, even though I had already gotten what the message was with all the other stuff that I have been going on, have had going on, have worked with clients and students on, have worked on within myself, and continue to do so because this is a big theme for us. But sharks represent examples of progress in the most assertive way, like very fast, very intense propulsion forward. And we are in a period like that of it is time to shift. It is time to change. There's no more sitting around saying, yeah, I'll do this next week, or I'll do this tomorrow. I'll get to meditating. I'll get to doing this later on. or I'll just live with this right now because it's more comfortable. We are collectively, we've hit some really major checkpoints and really have accelerated our progress to a point of, and I've been saying this for months now, which is, you know, even if you don't want to move forward, it's time to move forward. Like, even if you don't, if even if you're avoiding it at all costs, something's going to break to force you to do it, because there's no waiting anymore. And we agreed to this collectively. And I don't say that with any fear. I don't say it with any judgment. It is simply the way it is, and we've set it up that way. So basically, the shark energy, and it's becoming more and more prominent, right? People are like, well, you know, we changed our body. Yes, but all the stuff that manifests in the physical is representative of the non-physical. So the message is, you know, we're taking this leap, and we're doing it not just individually, but together in bigger and bigger and bigger consciousness. And the more we get to say, what's that? The mass. Oh, I forget the name. I forget what it's called. But we get to that point where it's such a mass that it's just basically, it's just sort of like the wake of the boat is like, we're just pulling everybody with us, because it's just time, right? Oh, I can't think of the word. It's going to be nuts. Anyway, so what's happening is this. If we can do a couple things. We can embrace the change and allow the change, or we can get bitten in the butt by it. Literally, right? We can be graceful with it, we can move forward with it, and yet we can get swallowed by it. It's up to us. And that goes hand in hand with what's been going on with, so another big topic that keeps on coming up is darkness, and looking into the darkness and doing shadow work. And I did a blog on my spiritual alchemy. Actually, I'm sorry, it was the Trinity Energy Progression website a couple weeks ago, and I copied it and put it on my spiritual alchemy website as well, about Lucifer and looking into the darkness. And this is a really important topic. It's a topic that people throw into the closet and shut it up and put it in the corner and say, yeah, we're just going to avoid that. However, because of where we are in the shift and changing right now, my understanding is no more hiding it in the closet. It is now time to look at the deepest, darkest parts of ourselves, and collectively look at darkness in itself and embrace it with love, so that we resolve it all, and the chasm from one end to the other, or one side to the other, whatever, once and for all, so we can move forward. And the only way, my understanding is, for us to really do that is to embrace it and love it as part of the light, because it is. Darkness is created by separation. This entire existence was created for duality purposes, and to explore the idea that there is a divine and not divine, that there's a me and a not me. And I say this in so many of my videos and writings and all kind of stuff. The more, so anything that has the energy of separation is an element of darkness. Darkness is created by separation. Think about it. If there were no separation, there'd be nothing but light, or the perception of light, which really there is, because all the rest is illusion, in my understanding, but that's a topic for another day. Anything with the emotion or energy of separation feeds the darkness and makes it bigger. Actually, the darkness and the darkness getting bigger makes the perception of separation larger. The energies of separation and emotions of separation are those of the ego, and there's nothing wrong with the ego, and I say that all the time. The ego was created to explore individualization and separation. However, in that, it has also explored the darkness and been a part of the darkness, because that's how we had to split it up. So this is a completely different concept for many, and a completely different perception of it. So what's happened is any emotion like fear, anger, judgment, righteousness, shame, anxiety, resentment, guilt, doubt, sorrow, all of these energies and emotions are energies and emotions of separation, and thus feed the darkness and make it bigger. So traditionally, we've had this whole like idea of, the battle of good versus evil. Well, fighting is resistance, aka separation, and separation grows the darkness. So fighting it actually makes it bigger and more prominent. And so this is really the tip of the iceberg, because there's so much there's a whole book to be written about all this, because so many things we have shaded from ourselves. So we could explore the separation and darkness, and that's okay. And now it's time for us to turn around and look at the darkness straight on, accept it, embrace it as part of the light with love, and that in itself can resolve that and helps us move forward. Now, I understand that there's some stuff that's been coming on, and that's really a discussion for another day. It's far more advanced in terms of, for us to actually complete this entire phase of existence and moving into the next one, it's pertinent for us to actually look at the darkness and love it, accept it, incorporate it without having to dissolve it, and just being able to view it and observe it, right? And there's so much around that in terms of watcher and keeper energy and masculine and feminine energy, and it's really interesting, some of the understandings that have been coming into me in the last several weeks, and incredibly intense in the last several days, on origins of separation, origins of how we created these jobs, and then we created genders from that, and why energies are the way they are and are portrayed the way they are. So anyhow, but the key here, and the most important part for me to communicate right now, is to be able to turn around, to look at ourselves straight on in the mirror and say, I love you, all of me, all of you. I love me, all of me. And so it's interesting, because I have a lot of people who come to me for clients and students or whatever, and there's all this drama that we're so used to around the darkness, dark beings and spirits and everything else, the dark side to us. And many are shocked when I'm so very laissez-faire and pretty much like, okay, that's fine. Let's just shift that and recreate your reality with love about that. And people are like, what? Like, well, it's important. Because when we accept our full self, transcendent of judgment, aka a separation-based energy, when we see the beauty of the whole creation, we couldn't have the rainbow without the darkness. The rainbow is a prism of light, right? Separated into these different rays. Separation. We couldn't have it without separation. That's why we created all of this, all of the 3D, a lot of the other dimensions, in terms of this experience and the experiment of duality. So when we start looking at things that way and saying, okay, we couldn't have had, all of this without the darkness. We couldn't have had all this without separation, or the illusion of it, or the play of it, or the lifetimes and the provisions and the way we have split ourselves and split ourselves again and split ourselves again and again and again. And it's the whole, I told two friends and they told two friends, and so on and so on and so on. That's sort of what we've done in terms of splitting ourselves as the divine consciousness. And so now it's time to, turn around, and then of course we created judgment, and it's all, like I said, been great. And now it's time for us to move to sort of like 2.0 universe, or whatever 0.0 universe. And so it's time to sort of turn around and look at that and say, okay, I appreciate it, I respect it, I love it, and I embrace it, and incorporate all of it, and accept all. In doing so, now I don't have to judge, because judgment comes from judgment within ourselves. And when we feel like we're unworthy of being divine, we're unworthy of being loved, then we limit ourselves to a certain point, because then we believe that we're not allowed to go beyond that, because we're not worthy to do that. So when we stop and say, okay, well, it's all good, it's all perfect, and even the darkest parts of our reality, to be able to respect it and honor it as part of the light and part of the journey, it actually diffuses the darkness. It actually diffuses the power of the darkness, because the darkness, why do you think the darkness preys on fear and anxieties and anger, because that's what creates it. Sort of like a chicken and the egg kind of thing. So now it's time to say, okay, well, it was funny. I had a client in not too long ago, and he had this really dark side to him that would just constantly be in his ear. And it was a consciousness, absolutely, but it was part of his consciousness, is my guidance. And I said to him, have you ever turned around and said, I love you to it? And he looked totally shocked when I said that. And I said, well, that would completely diffuse its power over you. But you have to be ready to stand in that love and truth and know that that's the truth. Worthiness and trust. We have these perceptions that the darkness is powerful and it's going to bite us in the butt, aka the belief of sharks. It's another energy of the sharks, is that if we don't watch our backs, if we don't watch ourselves, something's going to come from behind, from the darkness, and get us. What if we said it's all perfect? What if we said, I honor and love all of it, and it's all in divine order, it's all perfect for whatever purpose? And you know what? So the amazing souls who volunteered to be the spokespeople and not so comfortable 3D version, is a reminder of being afraid of of not just looking the other way, and being afraid of what we don't want to look at, having fear and letting it have power over us, resisting moving forward, and getting swept away by it anyway, and allowing. There's so much change going on. It's time for us to simply be the calm in the storm, and that is the importance. Anybody who talks to me knows and listens to any of these things that I post, that it is so important to do this self-work. My guidance for the past, I think, 6 months has been, trust nothing that your eyes see in the 3D. Only listen to your guidance. Because what looks so tried and true in front of you is not going to be so anymore. That's another message the shark brings us too, funny enough, right? As things aren't always as they seem. So interesting. It was sort of like the metaphor that I got in meditation one day is, can you stand there in the water and see a shark coming at you and trust that it is all in love, it is all perfect, and actually honor and love the shark? That is truly facing our darkness and accepting it as part of ourselves. And by the way, sharks, another thing that they represent, have to do with transcending the idea of death. That death is simply a transition and a graduation, and not something terrible that we have perceived in the 3D illusion, because we have convinced ourselves that it's separating us, that further separates us from our loved ones, and I don't know, all the other preconceptions of, I'm going to get punished, or I'm going to go to hell, or whatever. What if it's all about love, and what if it's all about oneness, and when we leave the bodies, we actually go back into a blissful state, which more and more people are having near-death experiences and remembering this stuff, and coming back and saying, oh my God, I can't believe I came back, but I came back to tell everybody about this. There's a great book that talks about this. It's called The Afterlife of Billy Fingers by Annie Kagan, and it's about the author's story of her brother coming back and telling her what his afterlife was like after he died. Pretty amazing book. Easy read. Maybe only... Oh, my phone. An amazing read. It's really quick. It's only, I don't know, it took me like 2 hours to read on a plane. The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. It's like, and there's another subtitle underneath that, but I can't remember what it is. Annie Kagan. But part of this is us releasing all of our preconceptions on separation, on fear, on darkness, and knowing that it's all part of the light. There's a grand scheme. And by the way, we're getting to this place. So the next step is, when we can do that, when we can accept every moment is perfect and divine and divinely orchestrated. And I've seen so much beauty in the symphony that plays, and how, we have these reminders, and how I honor and thank those souls who have been the volunteers to bring us those messages, right? Part of this is acknowledging, you know, anything that is based in separation is from the ego. So fear, anxiety, resentment, anger, regret, guilt, doubt, sorrow, pain, judgment, and shame, things like that, all come from the ego, from the higher self. So this is why it's important to be able to discern from the higher self. The higher self just says it is or it's not. It is best to do this, and it is best to do this, or it is best to not do this. And when we do that, when we trust that, regardless of what we see, we start to let go of, see, the ego and separation causes us to not be in the moment, right? And that's the other thing, that's a discernment of the ego, is when we are in the moment, we are completely present and in a place of completion with all that's around us. The ego focuses on the past and on the future. It worries, it fears, well, what happens if this happens? What happens if I don't do this? What happens if this could happen, this hasn't happened, all this kind of stuff. And when the ego says, and then when we finally let go of the ego and say, I'm just going to guide from my higher self, from the higher consciousness. Higher consciousness says, well, this is what serves us in the highest and best way. This is what serves, you know, us as individuals, as the collectives, as the bigger oversouls and avatars and all that kind of stuff. So there's a bunch of things around all that, but when we get to be present, then we become really, really powerful again in remembering our ability to create and manifest right now. And my understanding is the next step is for us to come into a place of absolute creation and absolute presence. And that is the only pure way of creation, is when we do it completely in the moment. When we don't sit and get stuck in, say, oh, well, that bothered me in the past, or, oh, I had to abide by this in the past, or I have to follow this rule, or I have to follow that rule, I have to follow this ritual, that ritual from the past that somebody taught me before. I have to correct a wrong from the past. I have to carry this forward from the past. This has to be a part of my reality. When we let go of all that and we're simply present and say, it is what it is, and I create from now, then we stand in our pure light of divine truth and remembrance. And that takes a little bit of practice, because we're so used to focusing on what we want to release and let go of, instead of standing in our truth right now. And I actually am working on a workbook on creation statements and creating our reality in the moment, and how to change and shift ourselves in the moment versus being focused on what we want to release and what we held on to from the past, what we manifest in our bodies and our realities from the past, so that we can start to create right now and be present right now. And the more we're present right now, the easier this transition and transformation is going to be. So that is quite a mouthful in one little video. So I think we're at 23 minutes. So I want to do a clearing and healing for everybody, with everyone. And if you're watching the video, because I'm only posting this recorded anyway, it's outside of space and time. And you absolutely can be a part outside of space and time, because time and linear stuff, time and space is just a figment of our imagination. It's part of the illusion. And so we can start out space and time, so we're all here together. And so what we'll do is we'll do a creation statement of, I create in the present moment. I am worthy. I accept and I allow my ultimate divine self to come forth and exist in totality and remembrance. And I trust that all is perfect. All with grace and ease and fun and flow. And so the intention would be to do whatever is to be done, so that we can fully and permanently exist in and manifest from the vibration and reality of that statement. And with grace and ease and fun and flow. Okay, ready? Let's go and do that. Close your eyes and take a couple deep breaths, and just be it out here in space, outside of space and time, and I feel that amazing energy, and then I will let you know when we're done. and here's another part of it. I accept and embrace and love myself in totality and free of condition. All right, you can come back and do this multiple times. It feels really good. Wow, there's a lot of stuff opening up. You know, in terms of the darkness coming to the surface for us to look at, that's part of this resolution and transmit, this acceleration in changing. And that's why we have so many things, my understanding is that's why we have so many things that the ego perceives as negative and limiting going on around the world, but it's actually just being brought to light so that we can look at it, remember from it, and move on. There are many portals and doorways that are opening and staying open to allow all the stuff to come up, sort of like the latch is being, you know, like the door is being propped open, so that we can do this, because it's just time. It's time, and it's best for us to do this. It's gonna, and we can flow with it, and we can listen to our guidance, and we can do it with confidence and love, and or we can choose to do it with fear and limitation, and then have a much harder time of it. That's your choice. Mine is the grace and ease and fun part. So that's it. So enjoy the month. It is going to be phenomenal. Every month is more and more phenomenal. So love you all. Have a fabulous, fabulous day. This is Angela Coulter signing off. And oh, by the way, if you'd like to work with me, I do tons of work with people to not only help them to create their reality in a way and be able to flow forward in a very different way, and changing their old reality into a new one that works in a much higher vibration, whether it's physical, mental, environmental, emotional, anything like that, spiritual. And then my goal is always to teach you how to do it for yourself, and be self-empowered, because it's time to remember how to fish instead of being given the fish all the time. So my websites are here. Spiritualalchemy.net is my personal one. Trinity Energy Progression is a practice that I was gifted with to share starting in 2011. And you can find me on Facebook and Twitter and every other place. So give me a call or an email if you want to work with me. And otherwise, we'll see you next time. Thanks a lot. Bye.